All right, guys, I'm gonna go over the most basic air sealing and duct sealing materials that you need to use if you wanna tackle some of these projects in your house on your own. So whether you wanna seal the electrical lines through your house that go through up into the attic, or the top plates, block in between floors, seal your ductwork and stuff, all these materials right here are kind of the basics that you should use. So I'm gonna start going through them, just show you what I recommend. And before you get started on any project, I definitely recommend that you have a good pair of gloves. They don't have to be expensive gloves, but just get some kind of construction gloves. And if you're going to be working in your attic or a crawl space with any kind of insulation product, I definitely recommend that you get a good mask. And you want to use one that has an N95 rating on it. You can also get the ones that have the port on the front that allow for a little bit better breathability. But anytime you're working in a dusty environment, you definitely want to have one of these masks on, and you might want to also have eye protection as well. So from this side over here, we're going to start. These are the duct sealing materials that I recommend. So this is a UL rated 181 metal tape, and you want to make sure that it has that rating number on it. Otherwise, it's probably not sufficient for sealing ductwork, or it's not going to stick as well or last as long. So with any kind of metal tape, these are great for sealing seams. What I usually do is I'll just fold it over like this, and then it makes it pretty easy to just tear it. So you get a nice clean seal, and then you just peel the back of it off like this, and you apply it, just put a little bit of pressure on the metal ductwork. So any of the metal straps that connect two pieces of ductwork together, this is perfect for that. You can also use it to seal the air conditioner coil to the furnace, or your air filter rack to the furnace, or to your return side of your ductwork. So that is a UL rated metal tape. The other type of tape I have here, this is an FSK tape. So this is what you use for sealing duct insulation together. So after you've sealed the metal to metal, the ductwork together, and then you insulate over top of it with either fiberglass or the bubble wrap or Flectix insulation, this is the type of tape that you would use for this. And this doesn't tear nearly as easily as that tape does, so you probably need to have scissors or a knife to cut this type of tape, but that's what you need right there. And then the third thing that I recommend is, this is duct mastic, and we've talked about this in the course before, but duct mastic basically is like a wet putty, as you can see here. So it's you basically will take one of these chip brushes, and you can get a wider one too if you want, but you're going to dip it down into here, just kind of goop it up, and just kind of be liberal with it. Make sure that it's got a decent amount of the duct mastic on there, and you want to paint it over top of the seams in the ductwork. So this is great to use where duct collars meet junction boxes and trunk lines. And you can also use it wherever the metal straps connect into from one piece to another. But sometimes it's just faster to use metal tape for that purpose. But duct mastic is going to last the longest. If you put it on nice and thick, once it dries, it's going to be really hard and really difficult to come off. So it's a great way to seal ductwork. And there's a bunch of different brands. I'll provide a link to all these different products in the Google Sheet that you're going to get in this chapter, so you can buy them directly. And of course, if you want to go to Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, your local hardware store, that's perfectly fine as well. And the other thing, real quick, make sure the duct mastic, the top of this gets closed really well. Otherwise, this will dry inadvertently and you'll waste the whole bucket. And some of these are not cheap. But anyway, so with caulk, obviously you need to have a good caulk gun. With caulk guns, you're going to have a couple of components that a lot of people don't realize what they actually do. So I just want to show you real quick. When you get a new tube of silicone caulk, you got to cut the top. And you can do that with scissors, or you can do it with a knife. But there's also a spout cutter on the side of it. There's a little hole on the side of a lot of these guns. And basically all you're going to do is stick this in at an angle, and you're going to pull the trigger, and it's going to cut the top of the caulk for you. And then after the top has been cut, you're going to use this and poke it through the top of the tube. So right here at the base of the nozzle is a plug, basically, so you have to puncture that for the caulk to come out of the top of the tube. And then I recommend using a nail or a screw. If you get halfway done with a tube of caulk and you want to save it for later, make sure that it doesn't dry out. Just take a screw or a nail and just put it down in the top of the caulk, tube of caulk. And then, so here's a fire block type of caulk. And so some new construction requirements, depends on where you live, will require that you use fire caulk to seal electrical and plumbing penetrations and any penetration that basically goes through a top plate or an exterior wall between floors or between conditioned space and unconditioned space with a fire block sealant. You can also use this to seal around anything that's high temperature. So we've talked about sealing like chimney flues, water heater flues, stuff like that, metal pipe or anything like that that gets really hot. This is the type of material that you want to use to seal that together. This is a more stretchable, paintable caulk. So this is a siliconized latex caulk, and this is made by GE, but I also like the Big Stretch brand. But these types of siliconized latex caulk will be much more flexible than, say, this type of caulk. This is a White Lightning brand, all-purpose caulk. And the reality is both of these are paintable. If it's siliconized latex, they're paintable. If it's 100% silicone, it is not paintable, okay? So this right here I use on exterior projects. I use this to seal my windows to the brick on my house. My house is 35 years old, and I've got some pretty good gaps that have occurred over time. So I use this for outside, but I use this for inside. So door trim, window trim, sealing those to walls. Either one of these are fine, but if you find one that's either Big Stretch or it's a higher end that says it's more pliable or more stretchy, I recommend you use that so you're not redoing the project every couple of years. The other thing that's going to be your best friend when you're air sealing is a foam gun and expandable foam. So this is a Soodle brand, and this is a fire block foam. So I talked about this in the air sealing chapter. I really only use the fire block foams when I'm sealing penetrations through houses. Even if I'm sealing like in between floors, if you've got a 1.5-story house like I do, you've got openings between the floors that you have to block, and then you're like with foam board, and then you're going to seal the foam board to the framing. This is the type of foam that I use for that purpose. And whenever you're using expandable foam with a foam gun, you always must keep gun foam cleaner handy. So what's going to happen is in between cans, at least every couple of cans, if you're going through a lot of these, you're going to take this off, and then you're going to put this can on here, and I'll show you. So here's a newer one. This can is basically just going to screw on the top of here like this, and then you can open the back. This is a little control nozzle here, so this opens the gun, and a needle will slide back and allow the cleaner to go through the gun or the foam to go through the gun. So you always want to have gun cleaner handy, and it'll also, if it gets on your hands or on the gun itself, you can use this to spray and clean it off. So make sure you got some gun cleaner and an extra foam gun. These only cost probably 20 or 30 bucks. But if you're in the trades or you're a professional or you're a handyman, I always recommend having an extra one on hand because these do get clogged up on a fairly regular basis. So even if you do clean these out, just keep an extra one on hand. Some of the other products I recommend and I've talked about are rope caulk. So rope caulk is a great material to be used like where your windows, if they don't completely seal together, like where the upper sash and the lower sash come together. This is rope caulk. And it's basically like a putty that's in a string. But you can pull this out, you can push it together, push it into gaps. I've even used this between my wood floor and my base trim on exterior walls to seal the gap there, because I've found that air comes through those spots. So rope caulk is another handy material to have to do some air sealing work. And then for bigger gaps, this is backer rod. So backer rod is used if you have, for example, in my house, I have one window in particular. When it was originally installed, there was way too much of a gap between the window and the brick. And so I had to use, this is 1/2-inch thick backer rod to stuff and fill that gap between the brick and the window. And then after I did that, I took 100% silicone caulk and I sealed over top of the backer rod to the brick and to the window. So this is great for that purpose. There's a lot of other uses you can use for that, but that's what I use that for. The next one up is a this is a foam window sealant. It's not just for windows. You can also use this for attic hatches. So there's an adhesive side to it that's sticky, and you can cut this with scissors. But so for example, say you've got a door that's got too much of a gap, maybe it wasn't installed properly, and you don't want to go buy a whole new weather stripping kit or replace the door. You can use this type of material to basically put it on the interior part of the jamb. So when the door closes, it's got something nice and snug to fit against. Another good use for this is attic hatches. So this comes in different widths and different thicknesses. And again, I'll put a link to some different options for you that you can find on Amazon. But this one's a 1/2 inch thick and looks like about 1/4 inch wide or so. So if you have an attic hatch that's leaky, you can take that door, push the door up, put it off to the side, and then there'll be a piece of trim that goes all the way around the access point. So this material here, you can basically cut it to fit on top of the trim. You sit it down on there, it'll stick to the trim, go all the way around the trim with it, and then you can put the door back down on top of the foam gasket, and it'll make your attic access door nice and airtight. The next one we're going to talk about real quick is a rubber window seal. So if the rope caulk doesn't do the trick and you've got a bigger gap between, say, where your bottom sash closes, if there's a gap at the bottom where you can still feel air coming through, you can use this product. So it can be installed on the underside of the sash, or you can install it on the bottom of the window frame itself, so that when the sash is pushed down, it'll air seal together. And this is just another, basically same thing here. So different widths, different sizes, lots of different uses for that. A couple other things we'll talk about real quick. You always want to have a good tape measure with you, especially if you're cutting foam board or Reflectix, bubble wrap to do air sealing work. You want to have a good straight razor as well. Make sure that it closes so that you're safe. And then cap nails. So in my house, I have a 1.5-story house where I've got a lot of attic facing walls. And what I did in my house is I installed 1-inch thick foam board on the attic side of those walls. So I had to have some way to secure the foam board to the framing. And cap nails are a perfect use for this purpose. And cap nails basically look like this. It's just literally a plastic cap with a nail in the middle of it. This is a 1.5 inch long nail. They come in longer widths, but for my purposes, 1.5 to 2 inches was perfect. Obviously you need a hammer to put this together. I've also found that sometimes if you need to hold something more securely, you can actually take the cap nail and remove the nail from the middle of it, but you can put a screw through the middle of the cap and then screw the foam board or the Reflectix or whatever you're using with the cap on it to hold it more tightly against the framing. So think about if you're in a crawl space or something and you need to hold maybe foam board up against the floor, if you're doing like a ventilated crawl space and you just want to seal the bottom of the floor. I've also used that on weatherizing mobile homes. So cap nails are a good thing to have. And if you're working in attics and crawl spaces, you definitely want to have a headlight. This is just a real basic one. You know, just click, turn it on, wear it on your head. I really like these types of lights. So this is a 180-degree LED light and it's rechargeable. So this one right here I got on Amazon, and I think I paid maybe 20 or 30 bucks for 2 of these. And you have a nice wide light and it dims to a lower one. You can click it again, it goes into a spotlight. But these are really handy for hands-free visibility when you're working in tight, dark spaces. So I really like these type of lights. You can find them all over the place online. One of the last things I'm going to show you here is an infrared camera that you can attach to your phone. And this one's made by a company called Top Don. And there's a bunch of different versions. There's one made from a company called Hikvision. FLIR is probably the most well-known. There's another one made by Fluke. FLIR and Fluke are kind of the industry most well-known infrared camera makers. But this one, I've used FLIR for a long time, and I have a high-end Fluke one as well. But frankly, the technology has gotten so good for less than 300 bucks. This one in particular just attaches to your phone. This has a USB-C port. You just plug it in here. And as long as you have a temperature difference between indoors and outdoors of say 15 degrees minimum, These little cameras will show you where you have missing insulation in your house and where air is leaking in and out of your house. If it's a windy day especially, that'll be helpful to find the air leakage. This little tool is worth every penny in my opinion. And for anybody that works in the trades, or even if you're just a handyman or a homeowner and you just want to know what's going on in your house, I really like this top-down one. So for less than 300 bucks, you can find a lot of things in your house to air seal and to insulate. And then this is probably one of the last things that I would recommend you do after you've done all the big stuff. After you've blocked all the chases, you've air sealed between floors, all the penetrations up into your attic, you can go ahead and buy these socket sealers. And these are just little foam gaskets that you can install over top of your outlets. So what you would do is basically take the plate off of the electric outlet, and then you would install this over top of it. And you wouldn't do it here because this is a basement wall, but if you're above grade and it's a framed wall cavity, this is what that would be for. The only other thing I would recommend if you're going to do this, you need to seal the junction box itself, the electrical box, to the drywall or to the surrounding plaster with a silicone or a siliconized latex caulk, and then install this. Otherwise you'll still get some air leakage coming through it. And then one of my favorite tools here is this ladder. So anybody that is a handy person or works in the trades, I can't recommend these things enough. This is an Extend and Climb is the brand of this one that I use, but they basically just literally extend up and lock it in place. And this one holds about 225 pounds. They have other ones that hold more weight or they go higher, but all you have to do is use these little yellow tabs. You slide them together and it closes, and then you just pull it back up to raise it. They only weigh about 20 or 30 pounds. They fit in your trunk. They can go into closets. They're great for getting into attic spaces that are in closets and tight spots. I've used these things for a long time. If you work in the trades and don't have one of these, I would add it to your toolkit. These are the basic things that you need to use to air seal your home. And so if you're one of those DIYers that likes to get after it and do it yourself and save a bunch of money, you know, with the exception of the ladder is probably a couple $100, $200 to $300. Everything else on this table does not cost that much money. And so for maybe a couple $100 in materials, you can make a big improvement to your house, reducing air leakage, which is what you need to do before you insulate. So that's it for the tools and materials chapter. Hopefully this is helpful. And the next chapter is going to cover how to find and vet out good contractors. So if you don't want to do this stuff yourself and you want to find the guy or a girl to come in and take care of this stuff for you, the next chapter is for you, and that's the last chapter of the course. So I will see you in that next chapter here soon.